Inventing HR, presented by BIMTech in association with the National HRD Network and our knowledge partner Deloitte. I am Dr. Manushi Chaudhary, Associate Professor and Head OBHR at Birla Institute of Management Technology, Greater Noida, and I am your anchor for this evening. Before we proceed, I have a small request to make. Kindly put your cell phones onto silent mode. Thank you. On behalf of the organizers, we would like to thank each one of you for this overwhelming response to our evening event. Having started in 1988, when BIMTech was established under the aegis of Birla Academy of Art and Culture, we are now into our 30th year of existence. It gives me immense pleasure to share with you that BIMTech has been ranked 5th among private Indian B schools and 14th among all B schools in India in the prestigious NHRD Hindustan Times Survey 2017, which was published just 2 days back. Beginning on the 12th of December 2011, over the last 6 years, we have organized 25 roundtables on different themes across various metros in India and received tremendous response from the HR fraternity in all the places. We have compiled the salient deliberations on all such occasions and published 6 reports. The latest one, covering last year's discussions, has been placed on your tables for your ready reference. A book edited by Professor K.K. Sinha, Mr. Ajay Soni and Mr. Indraneel Mitra, titled Manthan, Art and Science of Developing Leaders, has been published by Bloomsbury, India. This volume contains the discussions of the first 12 HR roundtables, is available at the Bloomsbury counter outside. Today, we bring to you fresh perspectives on the theme Leadership Disrupted, Pushing the Boundaries, where we aim to share research from Deloitte and insights from our experienced business leaders. I would now like to invite Dr. H. Chaturvedi, Director, Birla Institute of Management Technology, to deliver the welcome address. With a master's degree in commerce and doctorate in business management from Agra University, Dr. Chaturvedi has more than 38 years of experience in teaching, research and administration. As a former director with the All India Council for Technical Education, New Delhi, he has been associated with the formulation of policies, planning, regulation and control of management education, as well as other disciplines under technical education. He is a founder member and the alternate president of Education Promotion Society for India, a national platform for eminent educationists, education service providers, and edu entrepreneurs. Over to you, sir.
India, the city is also created for starting industrialization, setting up of big industries in this country and all over the world. Still, the city is known for its involvement in all facets of aesthetics. I also aware of the fact that some of the leading professional bodies in HR, particularly NIPM, they are having their headquarters at Kolkata. The movement started from this city. So, it is a matter of great pleasure that in this round table presented by BIMTech in partnership with National HRD Network, another premier body in HR profession, and Deloitte, we have amidst us some eminent thought leaders from the Indian business who have been actively involved in nurturing, engaging and leading talent. Their views in today's HR roundtable will be extremely relevant since they represent a wide spectrum of leadership in diverse areas. On behalf of BIMTech and our associates and partners, NHRD and Deloitte, I have great pleasure in welcoming the eminent panelists in the HR roundtable and all those stalwarts of industry who are part of today's deliberations. Our speakers for the day in alphabetical order include Mr. Asim Kumar Basu, who was CEO of Hindustan Motors, until recently. Ms. Preeti Das, Executive Vice President, IT Services, Suratland Global Services. Mr. Saurabh Das Patnaik, CEO, Srei Group. Mr. S. P. Nathan, Partner and Chief Talent Officer, Deloitte India. And Mr. V. C. Agarwal, President, Corporate HR, RP Goenka Group. As you know, they are all known in the industry for their dedicated practice. I welcome them all and request you to welcome them with a huge applause. Friends, there are sweeping global forces which are reshaping the workplace, the workforce, and the nature of work itself. In this era, when humans can impact the world through social media, machines can learn from past experiences, and analytics can predict the future, there is bound to be a major alteration in our workplaces and workforce dynamics. Demographic upheavals, the rise of digital technology, rapid business model innovation, and socially driven evolution in the employer-employee relationship are driving change for both HR functions and the organizations they serve. Today's organizations have to cope with the plethora of demands and pressure. Technology is advancing at a very rapid pace. You must have heard about the exponential technology particle, and it is said that based on the Moore's principle, Professor Moore, who predicted in 1965 that the computing power of a chip will be doubled within every 18 months. He said that this rule will work for 15-20 years, but still after 50 years of his prediction, Moore's law is working. The computing power of microchips is doubling every 18 months. So technology advancing with a very rapid pace, which is putting pressure on employees and organizations to keep up with such fast changing trends. One significant development in this space is the rise of artificial intelligence in framing employee experience strategies. In fact, in a recent study by Genpact predicts that humans and robots will be comfortable co-workers by 2020, and 2020 is not far away. WEF, the World Economic Forum, which is famous for organizing the World Leaders Conference at Davos every year, it estimates that 65% of today's elementary school students might ultimately work in jobs that do not exist today. Therefore, it is essential that tomorrow's workforce not only has a broad range of skills, but also understands how to gain new ones. They must become adept at lifelong learning. The digital movement is causing major disruption across all industries and the workforce everywhere. Digital disruption is the change that occurs when new digital technologies and business models affect how an organization creates and retains value. This value can be seen as the digital ecosystem shifts from translating data into insights to leveraging data to drive actions. All around us, we are being disrupted by big data, the Internet of Things, machine learning, blockchain, analytics, and digital intelligence. We are now at a significant tipping point where technology is no longer enabler, but the influencer. Organizations must rethink their business strategies and workforce needs in order to stay relevant and competitive. They will have to develop digital leaders rapidly, promote young leaders, and build new leadership models. From the increasing use of contingent.
Now may I request Mr. S.V. Nathan to please join me on stage. Mr. Nathan is a partner and chief talent officer of Deloitte India. He serves on the executive leadership of the firm and is a member of Deloitte's Global Talent Council. He has over 30 years of experience in HR management across diverse industries, including manufacturing, services, telecom, and information technology. He is an industry leader, mentor, and an advocate of ethical leadership and developing future leaders through coaching. Conferred with several awards and honors, including the Distinguished Alumnus Award by XLRI, Mr. Nathan was acknowledged as one of the top 3 HR power profiles of LinkedIn. Till recently, he served on the board of the National HRD Network as its National Secretary too. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Mamsik. First of all, good evening, everybody. And thank you so much for being here. This is a Friday evening. You must have taken some real special efforts to be here, so a very, very sincere thanks. Let me first introduce the panelists. So, as soon as I read out the panelists' names, I would request them to come on stage. So, Mr. Basu, Asim Kumar Basu, may we have you on stage, please? So, Mr. Basu is a seasoned professional business leader, 32 years work experience. He's the CEO of Hindustan Motors, as I mentioned. Holds a PhD, holds PG degrees in HR, marketing, finance. So he's basically an HR person who morphed into a person who's currently the CEO. He's a teacher at heart, so he has changed several roles in his life. Loves taking risks. At some point in time, when he feels a little fidgety about his contribution, he would say, maybe I should take another thing and do something completely different. So that's what Mr. Basu has done. Mr. Basu was a national scholar student all through his academic career. So he's one brilliant gentleman who's on stage. He's a fellow Institution of Engineers of India, currently the honorary president of NHRD, Kolkata chapter. He's pursuing his PhD in corporate ethics and governance. What he loves to do is he loves to walk every evening, and he also loves reading. So thank you for joining us. The next person I'd like to call on stage is Ms. Preeti Das. So Preeti, can you please join us? I have a simple rule in my life. If you want to do a job, you do a terrific job of that. So if you want to applaud, let's give her a resounding applause. She's really a multifaceted person. I've spent a few minutes with her prior. So she's got over 30 years of work experience. That's only part of the story. She has a rich experience in creating organizations, staying in those organizations, rising up to the levels of CEOs, and then moving on and taking new risks in our lives. So that's the other one. So Mr. Basu did not have an R in his name. Oshin Basu didn't have an R, but Preeti has an R. That's got a risk in that. More importantly, she was one of the hand-picked persons who really started ICSCR Prudential. So 5 or 6 people, Mr. Kamat got them into a room and said, let's start insurance. And by the way, in 3 years, you got to do 3,000 crores. Now the leader in that industry was doing 2,000 crores annually. So he says, let's do 3,000 in just 3 years. The person who led that as a CIO was Preeti. She went on to do multiple things. He also says that he is also interested in bringing out new social enterprises. So I think that's a very noble thought, in helping people, starting something new. So that's what he does. And of course, he privately mentioned to me that he loves his wine. So, sir, I join you as well, because I love that as well. I'm here as your moderator. My name is, if you're all ready, my name is Mannarbudi Naganatha Subramanya Vaidyanatha Iyer. That's my full name. I'm very, very happy to be here in Kolkata because years ago, my name of course is S.V. Nathan because my name was S. Vaidyanathan. And when I was in Calcutta in my school days, primary education, it was S. Vaidyanathan. And my grandfather, he said, no, this is not the way we should do this. We should truncate this so people will get this easy. So it became S.V. Nathan. And as you know that we come from the south, so for applying for those concessions that you have on your railway ticket, which will be priced at 50% because you're a student, I used to stand in queues, and every time I give out my name, I would call S.V. Nathan, and just to be sure, I used to say V for victory. And the gentleman would say, V for victory. Anyways, nothing like coming to Calcutta. I love coming to Calcutta. This is the only city, as soon as I alight from the flight or the train, I would touch the Mother Earth because it almost seems that this is my place. It's such a privilege to be here with you as a moderator. And this is my Marty. I really love this place. What qualifies me as your moderator? You might ask. I mean, you have a very distinguished panel, and my background and what I do pales into insignificance. So I'm going to start with a story. You must have heard of this, but there is a twist to it. So there was Einstein, and Einstein's theory of relativity was very well known, and any place he goes, he used to take his chauffeur along with him. And every time he takes the chauffeur was sitting at the back of the room, and he used to listen to all this. He had listened to him so many times that one day, when Einstein looked at him and said, hey, listen, I'm now really, really tired. So would you want to come and speak? And I'm going to a new city, so nobody would even know. In those days, we didn't have all these internet which would flash your pictures and all that, so it was easy. So the chauffeur went up, and he was giving this big lecture on the theory of relativity. As soon as that lecture ended, somebody raised his arm and said, Professor, I have a question for you. So the driver looks at him and says, what is your question? So he asks him a very intricate question. So this chauffeur looks at him and says, oh, that is so easy. Even my driver sitting there can answer that for you. So all I am doing here is I'm playing the role of a driver. I have nothing in my mind which will say I'm as qualified as these people. So all I'm going to do is I'm good at asking questions. So I'll tell you what I have. We're going to be discussing a very interesting topic for today. The topic that we have is rewriting the rules of the digital age, reinventing HR, and what we have is pushing the boundaries of leadership. So this is what is the subject. As per the latest human capital report that we have from Deloitte, the theme for the year was digital disruption, accelerating the rate of change. The accelerating of the rate of change happens in three areas. We are looking at change that is happening in front of our very eyes. I don't know if you noticed this. You take your mobile phone and give it to your grandmother who has never used a mobile in her life. It will take her no more than a day to know how that functionalities work. You give it to a child, the child will know how to make it work, and by the way, the child will be able to tell you much more what they can do with the phone than what you can. Flexibility, simplicity, teaming, leveraging technology, this is what is happening today. And it's knocking on the doors of HR in a way that is never held before. I was spending some time with the panelists just before this session, and it occurred to me that all that we were talking about was the pace and rate of change. For example, if you look at cars have changed. And today people are looking at newer things that are going to come. You and I would want to own cars. Our children, not so sure. So if that can happen to what is happening to cars, imagine what's going to happen to the profession of HR. Three things are going to be happening to HR. One is the workforce is going to change. Two, the workplace is going to change because of digital. And three, work itself is going to change. For instance, the new workforce is digital, global, diverse, and automation savvy. So these are the things that are happening out there. Organization, we will have to find new ways how to deal with these workforce. I can tell you this, the number of millennials that I have on my team is humongous. How do I deal with these very bright people? I call one of them and I say, reverse mentor me. So they come and teach me a lot of stuff about what I can do with technology. And then I would go home and I would tell my two children, hey, this is what we can do with technology on your computer. And then, once I leave the room, I remember my younger fellow telling the elder, he said, hey, Dad is not so dumb, huh? And that is not because I was any bright. All that we have to do is, how do we keep in touch with the pace of change that's happening with technology? Workplace is going to change. Does not happen everywhere, but today you're hearing of people working from home. IBM, of course, is on its head to say, let's all come back to the office. Places are going to change because you're going to get more collaborative spaces as well. All the walls are going to break. We're not maybe perhaps going to have cabins anymore. So changes are going to happen. Learning is going to happen on the go. Digital HR, the power of the big data, the information that we can get to make ourselves a little more brighter. Not to forget, today, people don't want to stay in organizations forever. I have a member of the board, and he was in IOCL for over 33 years. And I was asking myself, will I be able to stay in any organization? I asked my children, will you stay in any organization for 33 years? They looked at me as if I was from the spaceship. And they said, what's wrong with you, Dad? I mean, why would you want to do that? We want differentiated experiences. Why? Because the digital world provides for it. We didn't have all those kinds of things in the past. But today, our children have it. Our workforce have it. Right in front of us, a lot of change is happening. So what I have before you is the speech that was written by Dr. Einstein. So I'm going to go back as a chauffeur. I'm going to invite all the panelists, and they would come in and speak about the subject for no more than 2 to 3 minutes, giving you an idea about how they see it from their own lenses. From your own vantage points, what do you see as the big change that's coming about over the technology? And how it was participating from XYZ. So we are grappling with change, which we also don't have the answers. We are trying to see whether we can make it happen. That is one of the areas which I think. So from an HR perspective, and I see because I have been associated, I have been an HR practitioner, I see some kind of tremors coming in, earthquake happening. Not that I'm very afraid of earthquakes. The point is, there are some structural faults within the classical organizations and the HR relations. And if I were to believe, if this kind of structure remains of an HR function, I think the HR itself is going to have a major problem. But then HR cannot be painted by one color. There are many industries which are very, very forward-looking where HR is embedded within the businesses, and I think the IT industry, the ITS industry, the knowledge-based industries, the classical organizations, the manufacturing organizations, I would say classically they are having a problem to adapt to this new paradigm, and I can see large number of organizations in the classical space of manufacturing, the erstwhile, who are not able to compete or not able to change this, and the HR there is in fault lines. I think if this has to be really make it happen, HR to me should be a catalyst to make things happen. And especially, HR doesn't come with the domain knowledge of the business itself as such, but to make it happen, like a housewife makes happen for an entire family runs without the housewife's income. But the housewife manages the entire show, at the end of the day.
So somewhere the trust, the glue, the catalyst, the facilitator, all are soft areas, apart from the skills which you have to manage the multiple aspects, is something which HR could be doing. Unfortunately, classical organizations structured very, very rigidly don't have, still define HR as a service function, which I tend to differ. And one of the reasons why I can relate to you is, one of the reasons which actually made me feel, to head a business and see and to show the world that HR people can actually make it happen. So that actually pushed me into the business, to prove a point. But I love HR, and I love the HR practice by itself, so I am a people's man. I think these are the few points which I wanted to share extempore.
Thank you, Shara. That was very good. Along with it, can you all hear me with this mic? Okay, we can hear it. I think the one you talked about, the structural changes that we have to be making in organizations, that was a brilliant point that you made. Also the changes in the way that we think and approach, the way that we define what is smart. I think they are points that we should think about. So with this, let me turn this over to Preeti as well for her opening remarks.
Hello everyone, first of all thank you, the sponsors. It was a fantastic opportunity, and as Saurabh said, I did my Madhuri from West Bengal. That is something I can tell you, right? I was in West Bengal only for a year. I didn't speak Bengali then, but I married to a Bengali and এখন আমি বাংলা পরিষ্কার বলতে পারি। So I just want to start with something that just has been going on in my mind with whatever experiences, I think you did a exaggerated job, thank you for that, about talking about me, but I think, I just think, when I think about which companies inspire me, and I'm sure all of you look to companies that inspire you, the first name that used to come to my mind is companies like GE or a Microsoft, and then suddenly over the last few years, things changed to a Google, or maybe a Salesforce in my world, and these kind of firms, that suddenly started becoming very differential. Facebook, for instance. I started looking at them, and then I started following them, their trajectory, and that has become a hobby for me. I get these Google alerts all the time when I start looking at the company's trajectory as to what they're doing, and I constantly keep thinking of the people who work for them, or their partner ecosystem, or their vendor ecosystem, their customer ecosystem. And so I'll just tell you a story about, let's take the example of GE, for instance, a real top fortune organization, where it is and where it was at one point of time. Let me give some data on that. When Jack Welch, all of us know about him, right? Everybody looks up to him, has read his books. He's probably one of the most well-known consultants. When he handed over the company to Jeff Immelt, the share price of the company was at $30. And I'm coming back to brass tacks, how it looks. $30 was a share price. I would really urge you to go and look at what it is today. It's going very close to the book value. Very close to somewhere around $14 is what I had seen a couple of weeks back. I haven't checked it in the last few days because there's no point checking it anymore. Why? Why is it today? And today, just few months back, John Flannery has taken over as the CEO of GE. And every week, something or the other keeps coming out about this, about the, there is an issue of whether the benefits was calculated properly, and there's a few billions that was hiding somewhere, for a company that everybody looked at for Six Sigma top processes. The best black belt folks came out from there. What is the situation today? Something went wrong. And what was it? Let's try and understand that. And it was one of my biggest customers in my CEO's role about 3 years back, so I know it inside out, from what was going on. I'll tell you what I felt, and it is my personal feeling, may not be supported by many. It was over-processed. There were too many people putting in hankies on the same business. they call that. One business comes in, too many people put in money. That was my credit, that was my credit. Do you see that a lot in your companies? I'm sure you do. Because that's overmanned. And that's what is happening today. I also believe that most organizations, the 2008 fallout that happened, the economic crisis, is because the top leadership, the so-called leadership, overdrafted on the economy by maybe 20 to 30 years. Most recessions that happened went into a U-turn, but that was one that went into an L, and it will continue to go into an L because the overdraft that we did against our kids, our next generations, on the economies, on the environment is huge, huge. And that's what is taking us to the need for the digital disruption. What this is going to do is create a culture, it's going to force us to create a culture of collaboration. All the stuff that was power play, my domain, my area is going to go away forcefully because nature has a tendency to correct the credit and debit all the time whether we like it or not. And that's the correction, the normalization that's happening in the market. It's going to force industries to think differently. The attitudes have to change, and it's our children who are going to teach us, because if they don't teach us, I think it's doomsday for all of us. It's not a very great picture that we have painted. Look at the difference between the top leadership. How many folks in banks at the top? Look at the top banks, how much money they made, and what happened to the people below. Huge gap. The haves and have-nots have gone hugely different. So there's too much of wealth. What discussions do you see amongst the top corporate executive in the clubs that they meet in? Oh, have you moved to a penthouse? Have you got a Ferrari? That's the kind of discussion that happens. I moved into a Merc last week from my Skoda. That's the discussion. Who's talking about the value? But somewhere this has got to stop because inequitable distribution, and I'm not talking philosophy, I'm talking business right now. Inequitable distribution has to get corrected. And hence you will see a whole lot of companies dying out. They're dying out by now. It used to take 2 to 3 decades, and they say by the 5th generation, companies don't survive. Maybe 2 or 3% companies survive. It's going to get worse than that. So I think we have a very big responsibility at this point of time to make that shift. I believe that the future will be that on digital disruption there are 4 pillars. Pillar number 1 is we cannot afford to be selling our offerings. We have to create customer experiences. That's number 1. Customers will buy experiences, not just the product. Second, there will be a continuous revamp of operational efficiencies. It's going to be a continuous process, not a one-time act. Third, it will be an era of an empowered employee, which means the employee is going to take the decision. That's the real knowledge world where the manager sits at the bottom and the employee sits at the top. It's an inverted pyramid. That's really happening now. And I can see that happening in some parts of the world, where economies, where employees are really entrusted. If you go to the Bay Area, an employee can take a call in 24 hours, even if you have a structure that you have to serve the company for 3 months, they can take a call in 1 day and get out of the company. And there is funding available over there waiting to, capture talent, not just, attitude-based employees, real talent. And then the last pillar, which I believe that's going to happen, is the business model transformation. You've already seen it happening with Uber, with the Airbnbs. I don't think they're going to own properties anymore. I don't think they're going to own cars anymore. There will be driverless cars. There will be, electric cars coming in. Economy, the environment change that I just spoke about, it is going to happen. So that's all I want to say. I think there's a much larger change. And I don't think the HR, and to your point, Saurabh, I totally agree with you that there will be a big disruption. HR will have a totally different responsibility. The people will work, I believe, in a Hollywood model, where folks come together, do a project, because the skill is going to be so transient in nature that you cannot afford to create career paths of skills that are not needed for long term. So why will companies be investing in long-term skills when they are not continuing to go to reskill themselves? You will pick the best talent in the market. It will be a gig economy. And there will be platforms that will bring in need-based talents. The core team will continue to shrink and to shrink and to shrink. I was talking to Snapdeal guys just about a year back, and they said, we will not allow our workforce to go above 4,000. Do what you have to. Everything else will be gig. It will be gig economy. So the career paths will now be decided by the employees, and HR has to think differently. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I'm so very happy that I'm at the fag end of my career. So thank you, Priti. That's really soul stirring. And with this, let me turn to Mr. Agarwal for his views.
My respect to Dr. Chaturvedi and good evening to all the friends and panelists on the dais. Actually, I am not a very good speaker and I feel nervous when I am among such a crowd. So please excuse me. I will just share one of my experience as a coach in this context of rewriting the rules for the digital age. You see, what do we do in coaching? Coaching, we address some behavioral issues or leadership style, how do we operate. These are the kind of things we address. And most of these things, they not only have their repercussion in the office situation, they also overlap to the personal life, like in the family or in the society. The only difference is, when we are in a family, and if say I am the father and I have the children at home, and I have the wife at home, if there is a disconnect between me and my children, I will realize that there is a disconnect between me and my children. But when I am working in the office, I am so busy in so many things in the office, I don't realize that there is a disconnect taking place between me and the younger generation in the office. When these kind of things are addressed in the coaching process, I am sharing with you my real experiences. The coaches, they come back and they tell that it has impacted their personal life. Once I was coaching a senior lady officer, and once we invited that lady officer along with her daughter at our home, and her daughter was sharing her experience about her mother, that how her mother has changed, how she used to get upset with her daughter, and how that style has changed. So why I share this experience? Because this is related to the digital age employees and the senior people at the CEO level or at the CHRO level. Very often they are not able to understand how much is the gap between them and the younger digital employees. What are their requirements? What should be done in the organization so that their issues are addressed? So, this is one point I wanted to share with you. And two questions I will put before you. which I will seek your responses when I come next time, when our moderator asks the questions. Number one, who are the two most important characters in the organization who are responsible for rewriting the rules in the organization? This is question number one. Number two, what should be the capabilities of those two important characters in the organization so that they are able to write at least the new rules correctly? So what should be the capability? Is it the knowledge? Is it the skill? Is it their attitude? What should be the capabilities of those two important characters in the organization? Thank you.
I really love your take, Mr. Agarwal. You really brought me back, because what you're saying is digital or gig. What is more important is a personal connect with a person. I think that was what you brought out. I mean, you can have all kinds of digital, and the one that does not go to the window is that connect, because ultimately you're dealing with people. So I really appreciate what you said. And those two questions, I'm so glad it is for the audience, it's not for the panelists, so thank you, sir.
Very good evening to all of you. Thank you, BeamTech, for inviting us on this great occasion. I have worked in various capacities. I just like to put one perspective when it comes to leadership, the role of HR. I often used to ask my colleagues, especially junior colleagues, how you would like to remember your boss once he leaves. Because I started my career in Tata Steel, that time Mr. Rushimoto used to be a CMD. He used to be a role model for all of the employees in the company. And incidentally, subsequently, when I came into the role of HR, when I started conducting workshops, etc., was to put some questions. Please put how you want to see your boss or the senior leadership in the organization. Incidentally, none of the employees write that my boss should be from IIT, my boss should be from IIM or Harvard. What they normally write, he should be very human, he should be passionate about what he wants to be done to us, he should take care of us, he should give us the opportunity to explore, experiment, and he must support if I fail. If you look at all these are basically behavioral characteristics. It has got nothing to do with wherefore we have graduated, wherefore we have done a master's, PhDs, etc. I think even in digital age, everything might be disrupted, but this basic quality of managing human resources remains at the core. That is my belief and understanding. Because ultimately, human resources managed properly, business is managed of its own. That is what my perception and understanding. If the human resources are guided properly, it is ultimately, because I come from manufacturing background, all through my life I have worked in only manufacturing industry. I know the psyche of the shop floor. If you really talk very nicely to employees, this boss is very nice, at least he listens to me, or approachable. I think all those qualities are really going to be there, whether it is Gen X or Y or Z. When I am saying so, now what are the changes which is going to come? Definitely, as Preeti mentioned, the career path in future is probably going to be decided by the employees themselves. Because younger generations, they are very, very focused and demanding. I don't want to do this means I don't want to do this. You might be my boss. You might tell me, I don't do this. I want this to be done this way. And this is reality. This is happening in many places. And as Mr. Nathan has mentioned, that I myself is a very risk-taking person at times, I also don't compromise on certain issues. And I have seen this And if you're really right on your track, then probably you can really get to it. It might be difficult, but it's not impossible. And here comes individual leadership as well, and how you navigate through these difficulties. And as I mentioned, how this is going to impact the industry I come from. At this point in time, automobile industry. What you see, this automotive industry is not going to what it used to be yesterday and today. It's an industry which is going to change every second. It is no more on driving. You mentioned about driverless car, which is reality. Electric car maybe will hit Indian roads next year. It is already there, but it's going to be commercialized. So all these things are going to rewrite the rules of human resources management, looking at things differently, doing at things differently, but again, keeping the basic tenets of management in place. We are definitely going to do away with PMS, recruitment, selection, fitment, all those are going to be there. But yes, it will definitely even different platforms. That is my understanding, and hope that yes, we have lively discussion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bhatt. So with this, let's very quickly get on to our question and answer session. I'm going to be starting with Preeti. So the question to you is, what can be the potential impact of new technologies in the field of learning and development?
So, my sense is that first of all, there are already a lot of platforms for learning and development. There is no dearth of tools today in the market. The issue is the sense of entitlement that has to go away. So the technology will only become better and better, but we have to remember that in the next few years, man and machine will be working together. So learning type will have to change. And if we take an example, if I go to, and there are so many academicians out here, and I think they will be able to advise me better because I'm not an academician. But when I hire new graduates, or postgraduates from the colleges, it takes me 1 year to get them to become relevant to the business. I think that has to get accelerated because the cost of managing that in the companies is going to recede more and more. So what will happen? The students will have to start doing that much earlier in their lives. And the type of education which is more applied in nature, which is what they end up doing for the first 1 year, will have to start happening earlier. So I have a thought. My thought is, and I'm going to take a few seconds more.
No worries.
Companies are looking to do a lot of proof of concepts, right? Why is that not getting embedded inside the colleges earlier? Nobody wants to do it, no companies, you look at the companies, they don't have the cost to do it, they cannot take that cost. Why are the youngsters who can come into the company and do it, why can't they do it 1 year earlier? What is so great that is going to change in 1 year's time? So I think it is the responsibility of the industry to start embedding applied, and this happens across the world a lot. It is very little in India yet. And I think, the academicians are dying to get that entrenchment of industries to start getting it done inside the companies. And I, for one, will take a promise that from my organization, I will at least embed 5 proof of concepts, into the industry. I was talking to BIMTech just recently, and I said retail and insurance are 2 verticals that they teach on. I'm taking the ownership to embed at least 5 proof of concepts into their organization. I think that's the shift in learning and development. Tools are applied.
Thank you, Preeti. I'm reminded of at least one profession which does a fantastic job of this. If you look at chartered accountants, there is no institution that they go to. All they do is you get registered as an apprentice, you go work in an organization, and then you write exams. And all along the way, somebody else pays for your education. And at the end of this, there's a certification By the way, that's a much coveted certification. We have almost 4,000 colleges across the country. We have almost 300 odd universities. And all of them speaking people, only 7% of them are employable. So you're absolutely right on the ball. We need to have different ways of doing that. Let me go back to Mr. Basu. You mentioned something about the new technologies and how they have an effect on the automobile sector. So what will be the role of HR for people in the automobile sector? What will they do?
Before I answer this question, let me give background of the automotive industry as it stands today. This is one of the biggest industry. I refer to Indian context. India is already among the first 5 big automotive hubs. The present annual turnover of this industry is almost 4.5 lakhs crores, and it contributes slightly more than 7% of the GDP. Indian government has put a program in place called AMP, Automotive Mission Plan, AMP 2026. There, they have mentioned that this sector is going to be 3.5 to 4 times bigger by 2026. And the volume of business is going to be around, conservatively, more than 16 lakhs crores a year to 19 lakhs crores a year at 5.8% GDP growth and optimistic 7.5% growth is going to 19 lakhs crores. So you can imagine the volume of it, and the GDP contribution to the economics is going to be 12%. That is what the mission is. Having said so, what is it going to come? Two types of automotive, especially for human transportation, is good. When I'm saying automotive, it is all inclusive, two-wheelers, etc. But how the scenario is going to change in next 7 to 10 years? The first is, definitely as I mentioned, electric car is going to be Indian roads maybe next year itself as a commercialized vehicle for use. Next is going to be driverless car. This electric car is going to be in hybrid form. That means it can be run on battery as well as fossil fuel. Initially it will be hybrid because there will be lots of technological changes and also regulatory changes. And also there needs to be some specific areas for charging batteries, etc., refilling, etc. Now how this is going to change? This is going to create another 65 million jobs, and presently it employs 14.3 million people in the industry. Having such a big impact, so obviously the HR practices are going to be changed with the change in technology. The first place is that driverless car comes, then there is going to be loss of jobs for the driving community. The government of India is to some extent protecting them through this mission. It is not going to come in our side. All over the world, present electric car sales is less than 1%. Norway having the highest rate of electric car. So,
see, we are competing with a lot of music, so I don't know whether that's really the background music against which all your statistics are getting skewed. But regardless, I must thank the audience out here because you're really trying to focus with 1 year here and possibly 1 year on the other side. But I think the question was more about what has happened to the HR profession.
Yes.
And if I keep this really short.
Now I'm coming to that. Having said so, these kind of technological innovations definitely going to have a positive impact. We need not be frightened. In fact, this will create more new opportunities because new technology will come in place. The only thing HR has to train and retrain the workforce, and the new generation people has to be more tech savvy. Whatever is there in the Apple iPhone is going to be those kind of gadgets in the car itself. So obviously, any kind of manufacturing nowadays, who manufactures cars? It is normally mechanical, electrical, automobile engineers. But days are going to come where electronics and computer science and these software engineers are going to work for automobile industries. Because all the cars will be having embedded technology, in-car technology for even car-to-car communication. When it is driverless car, it can read the signal and automatically can maneuver itself. So all these type of things will be there. So there is going to be huge impact on the workforce, working workforce. Now HR practices. Because this is very highly technological.
So let's do this.
Yes.
Since we are competing with all that music out there, let me ask the other panelists a question quickly. And my request to all the fellow panelists is, keep your answers really short. I promise my question also will be very short. So, what is digital proficiency according to you, Sharon?
From an infrastructure space, because I'm in infrastructure space now, digital proficiency today, what India is witnessing is at the nascent stages. So there are three revolutions that happened priorly. One was the power sector unbundling. I think come up my colleague. From the power sector we'll know. Power sector was 20 years ahead. Then the transportation sector, which is happening, in Mr. Kaushal is mentioning. Now the infrastructure space is going to be a revolution, whether it's water, sanitation, Swachh Bharat Mission. From a digital proficiency at Swachh Bharat Mission, there are differences. The Safai Karmachari continues to have the same life of what it was earlier. Right now, he knows how much route he has to complete in a day to pick up how much garbage what you and me create during the day. At the end of the day, and during the day, he knows how much he is going to get paid per trip. That's the consciousness which has happened, not the digitalization that happened. The consciousness of a garbage worker, what we call it as a Safai Karmachari, at the lowest, at the bottom of the pyramid, because historically this caste-based it has continued to be so till now as well. But the Karmachari is much more aware. He knows exactly how much he should be earning during the day by lifting how much garbage during the day. That is one part. Second part, on the digital proficiency levels, from a user perspective, I see today users, whether it is a housewife, whether it is an average worker who is coming in, he or she knows exactly how much he should be performing to get his app as an incentive. Yeah. That consciousness, unknowingly or knowingly, is definitely there. So now whether HR can communicate it to him or her in an effective manner, that's something which HR has to do. But at the end of the day, people know how much they should be doing.
Very good. Thank you so much. So this is for you, Mr. Agarwal. So companies groom new leaders and managers of tomorrow. And you need a new evolved mindset. So how would you do that? You want to use my phone?
Now here in this question, the bottom line is evolved mindset. How to groom the leaders and managers in the organization with an evolved mindset. Now this evolved mindset is to my mind, is a very big term. All of you may have your own meaning of this evolved mindset. Can anybody explain to me what do you understand by evolved mindset? My understanding of evolved mindset is who can understand the mindset of the younger digital employees and their needs. That's why I understand the evolved mindset. And as I mentioned in the very beginning, that understanding of the younger digital employees, unless you are not aware of yourself, you will not be able to understand the younger digital employees. I am sure. And therefore, what I will recommend with my experience. Now, before that, I will come to my previous question which I put to the audience, that who are those two most important characters in the organization who are responsible for rewriting the rules? Any response? Yes?
Employer and the employee is a response.
My question was specifically two important characters. The employees, it covers everything. Yes, anybody else?
The CPO and the CTO.
CPO, Chief People Officer.
Chief People Officer and CEO. Any other view? Customers. Again, it's my question was very specific. Two important characters.
Sir, I would like to mention that
So-
employer in a sense, knowledge, skills and attitudes, three things are very important for an employer. Knowledge, skills, attitudes, all three facets. And for an employee, attitude will do.
So employees are important to the extent that somebody said that CPO or CHRO and CEO, that they will have to understand the needs of the employees. So to that extent, employees are also important in the organization. And CHRO and CEO, if we talk about the rewriting of the rules in the organization to meet the needs of the younger digital employees, the first point is that they will have to understand their needs. And what the experience which I shared as a coach, that understanding of their needs is not, it is very easier said than done. We are not able to really we are not able to understand their needs. And before we try to understand their needs, we will have to become self-aware, and then only it is possible to understand their needs. What I mean by becoming self-aware is, we will have to become more emotional intelligent. I am not talking of knowledge and skill of digital things. I am talking of emotional intelligence, means understanding the needs of the other people, what do they expect from us. Unless we do that, we will not be able to rewrite the rules in the organization. And for that, again I will try to share our experience. We try to create the coaching culture in the organization. And what is the meaning of coaching culture? Coaching culture means, particularly at the senior level leaders, they should adopt the coaching style leadership. Coaching style leadership means they will try to come closer to the employee, junior employees. They will try to address their issues, and then only it will be possible to rewrite the rules in the organization or to change the culture of the organization. So, little in more detail, how did we try to create the coaching culture in the organization? There is a term like barefoot coaches. When we organize the workshops and we talk about the coaching and coaching styles, then the leaders, the senior people, they learn something about the coaching without getting certified on coaching, and we call them as barefoot coaches. And we expect them that when they deal with their employees, their juniors, they will deal with the coaching style of leadership, and that really becomes very helpful. And that is the, to my mind, there may be different view. That is the only process by which you can have the evolved mindset in the organization.
Thank you, sir. That was such a short answer. I would now want to ask what I call as a rapid fire question, for which I would request all of you to please keep your mics with you. Make sure it's working. All of you. Okay. Make sure it's working. So, when I say one word, I don't want even hyphenated words. Just one word. When I say one word, it's one word. And your answers, I'm expecting it should be really short. So when I say automation, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Speed.
Accuracy.
Accuracy. Yes, speed is 2 words. Sorry, not accepted. Sorry, you're completely wrong. I needed 1 word. You used 5. Next. Robots.
Short.
Curious.
Hack.
Hack.
No, I don't.
That's 3 words. Come on. Sorry?
Exact, correct.
That's again 2 words. Okay, now we got to get really fast. Digital. When I say digital, what's the first word that comes to your mind? Numbers.
Technology.
Technology.
Empower.
Empower. Transparency. Cloud.
Deposited.
Deposited.
Collaboration.
Collaboration.
New gen.
New. Okay.
Central.
Central. Okay. Now I'll make it a little easy for you. What has inspired you in the last 2 years in just 3 words? What has inspired you in the last 2 years?
Be curious.
Be curious.
Empowerment.
Empowerment.
Helping the people.
Helping people.
My family.
Your family. Wonderful. I really like that. Any advice you want to give to your previous boss? It is the current boss. I think you're on camera. You better be careful.
No, bosses are not there. So.
Okay, let's start with Kishore.
That's a difficult one.
That's not an answer, Shaurya. Come on.
Bosses never go by advice. They rather give instructions, right?
Okay. The other thing is don't give instructions. Okay. What is your advice to your previous boss?
Don't undermine your subordinates.
Don't undermine subordinates. Okay.
Inclusivity.
Inclusivity.
To be transparent with the people.
Be transparent with people. Very nice.
I believe in the capacity of your subordinates.
Have belief in the capacity of subordinates. Wow, that's very nice. Okay, so what is the best compliment you have received in the last 2 weeks? We're all searching. I mean, I didn't get complimented at all. Come on, panelists. This must be easy. You go first, Preeti.
Kept quiet throughout the workshop.
You can quiet. That's a nice one. Okay, Shaurya. You didn't get one. Oh my God.
My son gave me a compliment.
What did he say?
Papa, you are getting fairer day by day.
Fairer day by day. Okay, fair and lovely. Okay.
None.
None. As in N-O-N-E.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. The last one, and then I'll turn this over. So, what advice would you give your 25-year-old self? If you had 25 years of age, and if you're not today, what advice would you give yourself?
I will borrow the words from economics. Just past
Yeah.
look up at the stars and not down at your feet. Try to make sense of what you are and what can happen to you. Be curious. I think just left it in my mind.
On your mind. Okay, that's something that you want to give as an advice to your 25-year-old self.
say, remove the fears and insecurity and be bold.
Be bold. Excellent. Excellent. Right?
I will request to teach me whatever I do not know.
Excellent. Excellent.
Be bold and face the world.
Be bold and face the world. Very well. We now have some time for asking questions from the audience. So anybody who wants to ask a question, raise your hand. Oh my God, there are so many hands out here. This is such a lovely audience. Yes, please.
Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and the distinguished panelists. I am Partha Mukherjee. I am the regional head for Max Life Insurance, bank assurance, and I have experiences in certain service industry. And my best point in my biodata is that I am an alumni of the Institute of Management Technology.
Excellent. Your question is?
Yeah, my question is, in today's diverse world and technological enabled world, we always try to measure everything in terms of technology. But do you really believe that being high-tech, we are actually losing out on being high-touch? That is, the human facet is now there in the back burner. And I believe, is it really the motion which is taking the emotions out of us?
Well, that's a very good question. So let me pose this to anybody in the panel who wants to take a quick stab at this.
It's a very good question, and as the rate of growth in the technology is becoming exponential, this gap of understanding is also becoming exponential. And therefore, the senior people, that's why I posed that question, that answer was CHRO and CEO. The senior people, they will have to devote themselves how to understand the employees, because the gap is becoming exponential. Their style of working, anything, the speed they expect, the decision making speed they expect, the flexibility they expect, it is totally different. And unless we senior people, we understand all those things, we are not doing justice.
You see, the issue is, which I wanted to highlight is, while we say that the high touch is missing, I tend to differ in a way. Because though the transaction, the piece and the speed of business is increasing, number of transactions also is increasing, I think it's all about experience. It's not about high touch only. The experience which you provide to your colleague or to your team member at that point of time is more important. It may be transient, but that experience is very, very wanting and it's very, very valuable. You can move on with the new experience. It's not about high touch. The definition of high touch is not fluffy. It's not there. I mean, every transaction you can actually rate your boss, say which is smiley or a non-smiley.
Yeah.
That will, also give you a metering as to how your boss fared during the transaction.
So what you're saying is neither high touch nor high tech. It's not an either and, either or, it's an ampersand. High touch and high tech, both. Okay, that's a good question. Whoever has the mic has the right to ask the question, I guess. Please keep your question really short, and I would ask the panelists also keep it short because there's a lot of questions around. Please.
So my question to the distinguished panel is, what skill sets would HR professionals need when most of the work in organizations will be done by artificial intelligence bots?
So what's the role of HR when you have all these technology things taking over? Anybody? Preeti wants to?
So, I think first of all, they have to be steeped in the business. That's very important, because typically in HR, and it's not that they want to do it. I think they have been kept out of the business discussions. I don't know how many HR people are caught into business discussions, especially the youngsters, in HR. So they end up doing a tick mark job. I think that's the first skilling that's required. Second is, I think the point that was just made some time back is becoming more humane. So important. When I'll just give a short example. I won't take too long. When you look at the help desk, that's provided. You know, when I'm sitting in my office and I get a help desk request, oh, your ticket is open, this. Nobody understands that in my particular role, I need something in a particular manner. It's a one-size-fits-all solution that comes to me. I think somewhere the humane factor, you can do touch points, somebody talked about it. At every point, every role requires a customized solution. And that is a big role that HR can play in bringing about that change to create employee empowerment.
I think you wanted a...
Good evening.
Okay.
Okay. Can I ask a question? Doctor, can I ask a question?
Please. Wherever you are.
Yeah, hi. My name is Asif. For the benefit of those who doesn't know me, I work for PwC. And I lost my eyesight at the age of 16, and I'm proud to say that I just delivered a TED Talk on winning solutions. But my question to Priti is, when we have a shocking statistics by a research report that India itself would lose 6.4 lakhs jobs by 2021, in your opinion, what do you think the role of HR would be in addition to hiring and firing?
That's exactly, and you know, it's going to be multifold. Reskilling is absolutely one, but I think they have to go beyond the boundaries of their organization and go and start looking out. I just spoke about it. They have to starting to encourage their business leaders to be in sync with the students as they come up. So I think unless HR prods them to do that, the reskilling will not happen. So that, you know, the jobs are getting created elsewhere. So I'm seriously not very, convinced about the fact that so many jobs are going to get fired. I have a feeling that they're going to get fired from one place, but they can be absorbed into another area. It's happened so many. This is Industrial 4.0. There was Industrial 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. What happened? People didn't get jobs? Of course they got jobs.
The next challenge which I see is transition of reskilling, the labor market moving from one location to another location and a job to another job. This has to be a better organized. Somehow I see these Naukri.coms and these sites don't work. Placement agencies don't work. They don't understand the labor market actually. A lot of research has happened. I have assisted with ILO research on this. But somehow we still not able to map and when the predictability, the lead function will happen. I think bodies like NHRD, if really can come in, which is emerging every day a few people are getting added, and then matching with the geography, that calls for AI.
Absolutely.
Actually making it up.
Oh yeah, so what you're saying is pools are defined, but how the pools really map to the needs is a problem that the country currently faces, and we'll find some solution to that. There is
also mobility needs to be inbuilt in the system.
The answer, Asif, to this question can go on forever, but let me go on to the next person who's wanting to ask the question. So, madam, please carry on.
Good evening, respected panelists, and all my dear friends present here. My question is certainly a broader one. Recently, we heard the news about President of France, Emmanuel Macron, talking about global warming and environmental concerns. So my question is, with rampant pollution and ozone layer depletion, what role HR could play in environmental agencies, and what are the examples of such agencies helping out in ozone protection?
So may I request question on?
It's about pollution. It's about environment. It's about environment.
So let's give this to Shaurav because he's most qualified to respond to that.
This is what today evening, before I came in, we had this discussion. In tomorrow's HR requested me to actually champion this entire environmental thing for say. So
is the question planted?
I don't know. Because so preempted question. In fact, tomorrow's head of department meeting is this.
Sure.
What I feel, this is a very important point for HR champions. Environmental degradation, both air, water and solid waste is happening everywhere and all of us are facing it in health. And that impacts your productivity of the employees as well. And their kind of, their well-being. HR should take a three-pronged attack. One, within the organization, to create, and in fact, there are environmental officers also, safety, to create high level of awareness, that is IEC component, information, education and communication, which HR is master at. And I believe that HR is master at. Firstly, that is IEC component. Two, run engagement programs around environment, which is sustainability and the largest stakeholders within the business, which means you as an employee, your family, your business and your customers should be the focus of your HR team, which will manage the larger agenda. And I think HR does excellently well in giving such initiative on environment, partial to the CSR but not well akin to that. Thirdly, is to award and reward such behaviors which are consistent with such defined outcomes, and this becomes the role model going forward for a virtuous cycle.
Excellent. And another thing, policy formulation, because that comes under HR, so there has to be policy formulation.
Okay, there is a question now from.
I have a question to Vicky.
Yes.
You talked about the acts and furloughs. You know there are more than 300,000 people in Kolkata. They live on footpath. Do you think this situation will create anarchy or stop the revolution like in Maharashtra recently happened by the country?
So the question was, we have a lot of people who are sleeping on the pavement and they are homeless. So with all of this happening, are you exacerbating the problem or is there a solution which is in sight?
Well, I have not been involved in anything of that directly, but I'll tell you what I personally see happening. I'll give you an example. There's a gentleman called Pankaj Roy. He's a Harvard graduate. A lot of you might be knowing about him. You know, it was amazing to hear how he created empowerment. Empowerment at the grassroots level. And when I heard his story, this is during my stint at Microsoft, I was so honored to be, it was so humbling to see that the gentleman just left everything and just built wells. And what that did was, it was not about the wells, but it was about empowering at the grassroots level where he said, women run the show, so why don't I go and empower the women? And if you see what he has done, he has created worldwide 160 plus villages where women have created solar panels, right? And they are empowering the entire village so the folks don't have to migrate to the city and live a life of dignity. Because once they migrate to the city, the whole thing becomes so indignified. The cultural, so I'm just saying it's art of possible. It is possible to make that happen. There has to be a will. I mean, if somebody is starting that movement, maybe one of us should, we should try and do something. It's easy to debate it inside the rooms, but let's start something small.
You want to use this?
So by 2040, 50% of India's population is going to be in the cities. So homelessness is an issue. Now how do we address this such population and homelessness together? We address is to create smart villages, having such amenities which have health, sanitation, water, and education.
Absolutely, that was what I was talking about.
Very good. There is another question. The gentleman really wanting to ask a question. Please, sir.
Good evening. This is Royal. First of all, congratulations. Really good discussion so far. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The question that I have is, Mr. Agarwal talked about the coaching model when he was making the address, and Mr. Nathan talked about the reverse mentoring. So, is it possible in this digitally disruptive age that all the existing models of coaching that we have grown up on might actually be declared redundant? That's one. Is it possible that with all this digitization, the role of people in an organization might reduce, getting steadily replaced by robots as juniors, as colleagues, as supervisors? So is that the kind of future that we can envision in our lifetime? Is it possible practically, for example, that say 5-7 years down the line, this panel discussion itself is held by robots?
Oh yeah, of course. So this question obviously is not for me, right? Say yes. Because the question that I can respond to, I'll say it's a very good question. The question that I have no idea about, I would say is an outstanding question. This is an outstanding question, sir. And I will request Mr. Agarwal, who's been dying to give an answer.
You see, when I was speaking, there are two things we know. One is the IQ, another is the EQ. And to understand the needs and the other people, our emotional intelligence will have to be at the higher level. And what I meant by creating the coaching culture in the organization is to make the people, particularly the senior people I am addressing, particularly the senior people, they should become more aware about the needs of the people so that they become more emotional intelligent. That's what I meant. And it is possible to do. It is doable. It cannot be done overnight. But if you start taking the action, if you from anywhere, gradually it will go on. And I have seen the difference myself, say between two CEOs. One is who is more emotionally intelligent, another person less emotionally intelligent. The difference between the two CEOs and their connect with the employees, I have seen practically myself.
I love the way that you pointed the CEO and then you looked at the less emotionally intelligent. So, on that note, let me ask Mr. Nadeem Khadim to ask and then come back to you, sir. Nadeem, go ahead.
Right. The panel has spoken about the pace of change. They spoke about the disruption which is coming. Now, with this pace of change, I have a very fundamental question to ask. With the pace of change. You talked about reverse mentoring, you talked about coaching, you said the child learns faster than the older one. Where is the time? Today, the customer is not going to wait for your reverse mentoring or coaching. What is management thinking of pushing this youngster fast on the driver's seat so they are more relevant to the organization today and they're able to serve the customer much faster? Because you and I know that the shelf life of the product is very limited time. Gone are the days where Hindustan Motors can run for 7 decades. Today the new model doesn't survive more than 6 months. What is the take of the panel on this, of looking the internal talent on fast tracking to the leadership role and being relevant to the customer rather than investing too much on coaching and reverse mentoring and so on and so forth?
So what you're saying is all this, there is no time for all this, and so how do you really do this? Okay. So these are, so the panel decides where the question is going to. Okay, please go ahead, Preeti.
You see, you're so right. There is no time to wait. One point that I think needs to change at the HR level is that leadership only exists at the top. Sometimes we miss that point out. Seniority is equal to leadership. That is not true. A leadership can exist with a 1 year or 2 years experience, and it's okay, to bring them up. It's very difficult to digest. In a typical organization, you try and tell that to the top 3 levels, that you're going to have a 2 year or 3 year experienced guy who's really showing the spark and who could have opened up a startup elsewhere and is capable of taking that top fast track role. You try and make people digest that. I think the first thing is of internal assimilation, readiness to accept that change. And I think if you don't accept that change, you can never bring a youngster to the top. So that's the first thing. And I can tell you, if I look at the way my daughter and my son understand what they need, what their definition of high touch is very different from my definition of high touch. If I just look at the insurance industry, the way my father would buy insurance will be very different from how my daughter, who's a 22-year-old, would buy insurance. Very different. I think we have to let the connect happen at that level and get those guys to cream up, become the key leaders in the organization.
So what is the panel? So would the panel recommend a right representation of this Gen Y or whatever we call at that level so that we have a more real-time organization rather than a dated organization?
I would. I would.
I would suggest that because what I see from youngsters, what you just related for your daughter as well, I think young people who just about graduated and joined the organization, in a year's time they have a challenge out internally, challenge ideas for the status quo and win this challenge round against bosses and against much more senior people. And I mean, young people, I mean, my son, Amazon, he works, and today he's going for a campus interview, and I was very surprised. A year and a half, the joining of the moment. Now he's going for campus, and I said, your HR, no, HR has told us how to do the coaching, how to take an interview. And now they are going for an interview for the campus. I'm very amazed.
They actually found that all of us who are in HR putting in several years of experience are not good enough. Let's get the younger people to do that. But that's really the thing that's happening in the world today. That there is a lot of disintermediation happening. At another level, that's also, which is really the truth, and I think you spoke to it, you got to have learning on the fly, learning on the go. You need coaching, but it doesn't have to be in a classroom setting. I mean, today you have your mobile phones. If you're in a train, in a car, in a bus, you're walking along today, our biggest problem is that you'll have possibly accidents happening on the road because everybody is onto their mobiles. But regardless, if you don't learn, Bill Gates referred to that, if you don't spend 5 hours in a week learning something, you're going to be outdated. On that, I'm going to ask for the very last question for the evening, and I just see some 5 hands out here. So let's take the lady there. You have the mic. So let's give the mic to the lady. So, and then we can come back to you. The rest of the questions, what I would suggest. Professor, how much time do we have? Manasi? Just 5 minutes. So,
very quick.
Yes, ma'am. Very quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. From the trend, from what you have said, what Preeti has said, what Mr. Saurabh has said, and a lot of others, I wonder whether the time has come when, like supply chain happened about 3 decades ago, people talked about backward integration. Whether now the role of HR extends beyond the organization into the future workforce who might be coming in and developing ways, and also HR being one of the people in the top team who is going to predict how things are going to be in this fast-changing, evolving digital age, so that people are prepared, the people are prepared, not only the present employees, but the future workforce. I wonder whether this is the time that it's coming and whether HR should get skilled for that.
The answer is yes. You asked a question and responded to that as well, so thank you, ma'am. There was a question from this side. Gentlemen, want the mic, please?
Great.
Great. Wow.
You know, but she asked, how can HR and you go with the, how can they do it? How can they do it, but HR? Future employees. That was the question she asked.
That's an outstanding question. I'm going to come back to you in a moment. Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Abhinav by a company called Consulting, an integrated HR solutions firm. I'm also a co-founder of a company called 9Edge, which is into dedicated hiring solutions, where we are trying to bring all the freelancers of the world and connecting with the clients. So basically, it's a question for Preeti, because you mentioned the point that you said gig economy will take over the traditional FTE model, like the Hollywood. So my question is, I would like to understand how prepared are current day leaders and managers to accept freelancers for project-based deliveries than FTE models?
Very good question.
They are. You know, not by design, but by force. They don't have a choice. That's it. Economies don't allow them to do anything else. It's happening very fast.
Even in the conventional setting, in the infrastructure sector, like in our team, we don't have a very large team. We have about 4 But when I have to design and I have to tender, and that's a 15 days gap, I need to hire experts in design electromechanical items or SCADA control.
So you need gig economy anyways.
Whole night, they work together about for the next 15 days.
together the entire bit. Then we will look at it.
Excellent. I saw one more hand out here. Yes, sir?
Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm Shumon from PwC.
You got to speak a little louder, please.
Sure. Very good evening. I'm Shumon from PwC. I completely agree with Ms. Das that the inequitable distribution of whatever it is should go, and there should be some equilibrium restored in the society, in the industry. But my question is how? Through an intervention or through a revolution?
You know what? We just spoke about business model disruption. Right? What is happening? Just take the example of Uber. How many folks are getting employed? Being a driver. I mean, you don't need to go and ask for employment. You're just there on a platform, register yourself, you have a basic skill set, and you're already getting empowered. That is the direction in which the whole economy will move. Because the current model skills, monolithic, huge structures cannot engage what you're talking about. So equitable distribution will happen. It will not happen overnight. But you will have folks getting slowly coming up. You just look at India, and I'll just take half a second. India, what it was, and I saw a McKinsey report about 3 years back, and I think there is one that's just come out, if I'm not sure. The ability of Indians, you know, who have moved above the poverty line has become better, right? That is going to happen. It's not going to be an easy change, because so long as greed is there and you cannot do anything about it, but they'll be forced into correction.
Thank you.
So, I'm going to, if it is okay, I'm just going to close this evening. This has been a very engaging debate. I see that there are still some hands that are being put up. I know there may be questions still on your mind. The panelists, I'm sure as soon as they descend, you might be in a position to ask them more questions. Very clearly what we are saying is, there is continuous investment in developing the skills of our people. What I also heard is that in this current world, few things are happening at a breakneck speed. Our capacity to learn, our capacity to unlearn, and our capacity to relearn. This will define our relevance in the market. And I'm talking to all our HR professionals. I'm also looking at the value that we place with our businesses. That's going to change. And if you don't believe me, today, you must have heard about the compensation stuff that's happening in one part of the world where companies are officially banning the reference to an earlier compensation. What did you get in your previous company? That's gone. Because if people are looking at a value fit and not a cost plus, if that is where the world is moving towards, then all of us sitting out here must ask ourselves, what is the value that we bring and how do we stay relevant? This whole discussion that we had was part about technology, part about what Sharon mentioned was, how do we bring the ecosystem in place? Passionately speaking, all the stuff that it takes to bring the heart and the mind together in an organization where you're looking at high touch. Not to forget what Mr. Basu spoke about, the rate of change that is happening and how do we adapt ourselves to that change. So, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a very engaging evening. I couldn't have asked for anything better than to sit here and listen to a set of wonderful questions and even greater responses. On this note, I'd like to sincerely thank you. If there are questions that are unanswered, it is my fault. If there are questions that have been answered the way that you wished and possibly enlightened you, owe it to the panelists. Thank you all very much. Fantastic evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you'll agree with me that with this panel here, it has been a very exciting, very enriching, very lively session that we've had today. Friday evening, traffic and this jarring music, we've braved it all. Nathan sir, things could have been just one shade better had Professor Sinha been with us here today, the man behind this series, and we are really missing him here today. May I now request Mr. Arnab Chakrabarti, Secretary NHRD and Kolkata Chapter, and GM HR and Admin CSC Limited, to please deliver the vote of thanks.
Good evening and sincere thanks to BIMTech from the local chapter in Chadi for organizing this wonderful evening. And it is so wonderful to have Nathan with us. So wonderfully he makes little stories about each one of the panelists and how he brings forth the best out of each one of them. The variation of the panelists, where one side the variation speaks about disruption, the other side speaks about the human touch, and we do agree at the end of it, it is the conjoined family touch and the disruption which requires to bring out the best in each of us. However, leaving aside what we have gained from the day, I would just put up a little thought, because I come from a little different school of thought. Like most of you enter at the age of 22 into a company as a management trainee, or go into a company as a technical trainee. I entered the armed forces at the age of 22, and when I was listening to this panelist, the main issue is disruption, the main issue is leadership, and we were born in disruption. So why do we all talk about that it will take some time for leaders to change? Maybe there is one little difference. In the armed forces, what happens is you lead from the front, and if you don't change, you die and people behind you die. That fear is not in the corporate world. That is why it's different for you to change. And the fear, the day it will enter your heads, you will change in a second. No theories, no jargons, it will end in a day. So this little different thought process would probably take you ahead. Thanks a lot to all these panelists to discuss what they have done so far for us. Thank you, BIMTech, for bringing us all together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chakrabarti. May I now request Dr. Chaturvedi, Director BIMTech, and Professor Akhil Pandey, Chairperson, Center for Management Development and Consultancy at BIMTech, to please felicitate our panelists. And we have some of our alumni here helping us with the gifts. To begin with, Mr. Asim Kumar Basu, please. Thank you, sir. Can we have a round of applause, please? Ms. Preeti Das. Mr. Saurav Das Patnaik. Mr. V.C. Agarwal. And thank you, Mr. Nathan, for leading this panel today. If you are wondering what these mementos are, these are wonderful Tanjore paintings put in place by Mrs. Chitra Sinha, wife of Professor K.K. Sinha. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the conclave. I'm sure that for each one of us, this program was an insightful and enriching experience. We look forward to your continuous feedback and engagement with all of us. Please join us for dinner being served outside. Wish you all a wonderful evening. BIMTech alumni and the organizing team from National HRD Network and Deloitte, please come up for a group photograph. Thank you.
Group photograph.
Team BIMTech, Deloitte, National HRD Network, Kolkata chapter, please join us for a group photograph. Sanjay, where are you? Mr. Sanjay Verma, can we have you on stage, please?
Sir. सर मोबाइल तो पीछे कर लिए Sir, look at the camera, please.
But I was about to yesterday again. The sales guy was almost of 50%. Great guy, man. Sales, the disruption, land US, called everything.